Accessing library computer data.
The world doesn't always adhere to logic. And sometimes when you're lost, you're found.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We're continuing our coverage of Star Trek Discovery. Right now we're up to, what is it? Let me click on the box here. Episode 14 of Season 1. It's called The War Without, The War Within. It was written by Lisa Randolph, directed by David Solomon, aired back on February 4th, 2018. In this episode, back on the USS Discovery, Michael Burnham and the crew are faced with the harsh reality of the war during their absence. In order to move forward, Starfleet must use unconventional tactics and sources to take their next action against the Klingons. Clay, how are you?
I'm good. And, I feel like we get a lot of feedback that we're too negative. So I would like to start off being positive in the show by saying I really liked how they saved arguably the most preposterous plot twist for the second to last episode. I also liked how they saved arguably the most preposterous plan in the history of Star Trek for the second to last episode.
Yep.
And I also really like that they really turned the idea of a television show on its head here by actually making a serialized television show where it actually works better if you haven't watched any of the preceding episodes. And I feel like that is nowhere better displayed than this episode.
Yeah, it's something that's never been accomplished before on TV, I think. See, let's see here. Because we've had a couple of days where we haven't recorded this right after, it's now a Tuesday? It is Tuesday, so we've waited a couple of days to record. I had a chance to read some of the reviews.
Is it, or is it 9 months in the future? I don't know.
It might be. We can always just jump back if we grow another spore colony. But I think that I had a chance to read some reviews. I think that this episode was something of a downer in general across the board for some reason. Just a lot of the reviews were more negative. Reviewers that have been previously very positive about the show didn't like this episode, and I think that's interesting. And I will say that it's also very interesting because I actually really liked exactly half of this episode. Yeah, and we'll get into it. We're going to play an audio clip. Me and Clay are going to come back, and we're going to explain why this was the greatest episode of television ever produced.
Lorca sidelined the most vital asset in our fleet. Now, with your return, we have disseminated your hard-earned cloak-breaking algorithm to the front lines, which will neutralize the Klingons' ability to render their ships invisible. But our fear is, it's too late. The war here has waged on for 9 brutal months without it.
So, Clay, as I was saying as I was leading in, a lot of the reviews seem to think that this was the episode for some reason that a lot of people started to go, none of the plot twists are making sense at this point. I don't know what it was about this episode that made people feel that this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Uh-huh. I noticed a lot more, I don't like the term, but nitpicky review. Like, people were really starting to notice the small things that I don't think are nitpicks. I think they're like kind of fundamental problems with the show, but the reviews are certainly like honing in on those issues. Like, why is this happening? How could that happen while this is happening?
Welcome to the boat, everyone.
Yeah, and some people still like it, but I thought that it was I don't know if I'd go as far as to say that I liked the episode. I thought this was a illuminating episode because to me what it did was it gave me answers to what the show thinks it was trying to do for the past 14 episodes in a lot of ways. Like, I wrote down the main themes here. Like this episode showed me what Burnham's arc was supposed to have been, that they did not do justice whatsoever. It showed me the mirror universe. They indeed considered the mirror universe to be representative of the darkness that's within people, which didn't come across clearly on their whole sojourn into the mirror universe. And it focused again on the difference in the psychology of the Klingons and the humans, how they pursue, how they see things. And I think that the show got a little bit of that, but it never delved into it. And this episode was, people will say this one was boring, but I appreciated that it slowed down and it poorly explained how all of these themes that they were trying to do that was their intention, and it didn't work whatsoever. But that's what they were trying to say with this whole thing.
Well, you kind of hit it for why I liked it. Excuse me. At least the first half of it anyway. And it's interesting that the dividing line, I went back and I watched it again today, and it is literally the halfway point that it takes a turn for me.
What scene?
Everything up until Georgiou, the commercial break where Georgiou tells Burnham how to defeat the Klingons. Okay. Up to that point, I liked everything.
Yeah.
And the reason I liked it is because they actually took a breath. They actually had a minute to just kind of like deal with stuff to a certain extent. And it was a lot of talking and it was a lot of exposition and explaining stuff, but it felt more Star Trek-y. Like it felt more like characters actually dealing with the stuff that had happened to a point. I got real excited. I shouldn't have got my hopes up. I got real excited when the Admiral showed up and they explained that they need to go to the starbase, but the Spore Drive is broken and they shouldn't go to hyperspace because it's very dangerous because there's Klingons everywhere. And I was like, oh my God, that's actually a plot of an episode of television.
Right.
That's actually like, it's actually something that they have to do. And the weapon that they need to do it, they don't have. So they're going to have to find another way to do it. But as is the fashion of this bad improv writing that is this show, the next person who got the baton said, well, no, they're going to go to hyperspace. It's going to be fine. And we're just going to grow more spores because why the hell can't we do that in 10 minutes? So like it was really up and down for me.
I think it's even, I think you might not be accurately getting that scene, not in a bad way, but I think that what's funny to me about that scene is I wrote it down because that scene to me where they explain that the Klingons are all over the place and that it's very dangerous for them to get to the Starbase 1. Mm-hmm. The whole problem with the writing of this series that I really noticed in this episode is that characters will talk about something and they'll talk about it in a way as if it's going to have an impact on something.
Right.
And then the next scene, they just erase it and they say, no, never mind. So the scene that you're talking about actually they're like, well, we can't spore drive over there. We don't have spores. If we warp over there, it's dangerous because Klingons are everywhere. And the Admiral goes, it's a risk we're going to have to take. And then they warp there and there's no problem getting to the starbase.
Exactly.
It's like, why did you bother bringing this up in the first place? There's no issue here.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I was, it let me down, but I shouldn't have got my hopes up that they were actually going to follow through with something like that they set up.
And we were also wrong that the Discovery was not causing mayhem behind the scenes. They just destroyed it.
Yeah. Oh, what a fucking cop-out that was. Where they're just like, yeah, I don't know. As soon as 9 months ago, the Discovery just blew up. Like they didn't even have any. My understanding of that is as soon as they switched places, the Discovery was destroyed.
The Klingons destroyed it.
Yes. Yeah. Which I think is fucking bullshit. But also, I would like to say, so we watched this one kind of late because of the Super Bowl. And you had mentioned to me that there was a twist coming at the end. And I was ready. I was so ready to do a victory lap. I was so ready. Because everything in this episode, driving forward through the episode, said to me, oh, obviously, they're going to jump. They're going to use the Spore Drive to jump, and it's going to fuck up, and they're going to end up back at the Battle of the Binary Stars.
Sure.
Because, and the reason I thought that, the way that they're talking about everything is so final, and everything has just gotten completely insane. Like I guess I'm not assuming that they're going to try and tie it all up back to the even if they're going to attempt to do that, to tie it all up to the normal prime timeline. But all the threads kept just getting further and further away when it felt like they should start to be coming back on each other.
Yes.
That I was like, there's only one thing they can do. They have to go back. They have to go back and fix this stuff. Like even that scene with Tilly and Burnham where she's like, I just talked to Sarek. It felt like a very final, like it was the last time I was going to see him. That kind of thing. It all felt telegraphing like it was going to, like, this is going to be the end. So how do you get out of that? Well, you got to go back to the beginning. And I'm not convinced that won't happen yet because we still got one episode and that still could happen. But I was disappointed when it turned out just to be that they've made Georgiou the fucking captain.
I don't want to. I don't want to get to that yet because
we can talk about that later.
Yeah, let's And I know that I don't want the discussion to get too bogged down in the nitpicks, because did you think this episode did, and I guess we both agree that it kind of slowed things down and it gave us a little bit of character interaction that's been sorely lacking. So I praise the show for doing that. It might be too little too late. And
yeah, I think it is.
I think that the writing is funny, because the writing in those scenes, to me, if you just sit there and are like drunk or stoned or whatever, and you're watching it, I feel like it would just kind of fly by you, and you wouldn't really notice anything.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, you don't need to have seen, like, it almost makes it better if you haven't watched any of the other episodes and haven't paid attention to what's going on.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think the writing is just like, and I'm not saying this to be like overly critical. The writing is like fundamentally stupid on some level. It's like, it's very, like, I think the Burnham thing makes the most sense to me. So what I'm talking about, Burnham's arc here over the entire season has been, it basically is summed up in, to me, what is the best scene of this episode, and it might have been the best scene of the series. I thought this episode actually had the best scene and the worst scene of the series so far, and it was in one episode. The best scene to me is Sarek and Burnham when they say goodbye to each other. Their whole conversation there is implying that Sarek realizes that Burnham has fallen in love with Tyler, who's a Klingon, and there's this illogic to her love that he can't hold against her because he recognizes that she's human. It's kind of a touching send-off to the both of them. It's like, it's always the Sarek moment where he realizes that he can't be that hard on his kids, basically.
Right.
And it's a touching moment, totally fits the Sarek character. It fits Burnham's problem. My problem with it is that that was not her problem the entire series. That's not been the issue. There was nothing illogical about her pursuing romance with Tyler because she didn't know that he was a Klingon. You know what I mean? Like, if her going after Tyler in a romantic relationship had been her knowing that he was compromised somehow and she still loved him, and that caused all this problem to happen, that would have been illogical, and that would have been the human weakness. You know what I mean?
Well, to be fair, she kind of did. It was just a different compromise than she thought.
Right. He wasn't just a broken soul. He's actually like a mixture Klingon person. But
which they keep trying to explain, and it just makes it more and more dumb.
More and more complicated.
I know what you're talking about. That is fundamentally flawed in its concept, because there's no way that, as far as she was concerned, she was just falling in love with a normal guy.
Right. And there's nothing
even
wrong
at this
with that.
point, and even at this point where they're having this conversation, for all intents and purposes, he is now just a normal guy.
Yes.
So
right.
What's the problem here?
That'll segue us into the Tyler thing, which is similarly confused, because the show does not know whether or not the Tyler that we now have is responsible or is not responsible for what he did.
Yeah,
right?
they're really not making a stand on that one.
No, and so what happens is they have all these scenes where he's walking through the ship because Saru gives him free reign for some reason, and he's walking through the ship, stumbling into people who are pissed off at him, and it's like, well, they have a right to be pissed if he was responsible for this somehow, but it seems like he had no idea what was going on and he couldn't stop anything. So what's the point of Saru not making an announcement saying like, hey, don't go too hard on Tyler. You know, he had a lot of horrible shit done to him, but now he's normal. He's not responsible for what happened, even though it did culminate in that nice after school special moment where everyone shared their lunch with him at the lunch table. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to give him too much crap for that one, just because that's not really narratively interesting, you know, and also it doesn't. The thing with Tyler that they've been trying to drive home very imprecisely is this conflict that he's having over the two sides of his personality, and so he kind of has to have those moments where where he runs into the consequences of what he's done. But it's very. And I mean, you know, even if Wes, if you killed my family and then it turned out that it was not you, it was. You had a Klingon in your brain or something, you know what I mean? It was, you were not under control of your own body. I think it would still be very difficult for me to look at you and not see the person who killed my family. So I don't begrudge them that stuff too much, but inherently I agree with what you're saying. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And, I mean, I think that the problem with the Tyler stuff is that
it doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter either way, kind
No.
of. He's fucked either way. So the process of becoming Vok, as nonsensical as it is, also doesn't really have an impact on how the Discovery crew feels about him at this point.
Right.
Like nothing.
Yeah.
Has there been a more pointless storyline than this Vok storyline? Like what the hell was the point of all this? That was terrible.
Well, we got one more episode that's very Klingon heavy, I assume. So they got one episode to redeem it. But as of right now, it's made no fucking sense or had no point whatsoever.
And then I'll just say my last sort of, there's the mirror universe is the darkness within. If anything, the mirror universe, we'll see how this all wraps up. The mirror universe Sojourn was completely pointless in any, there was no reason to do any of that stuff there.
Here's a question.
Sure.
Is there a reason? Well, I know why, because it's going to come. Well, no, I guess it still works. I was going to say, is there a reason why the person who leads this fight has to be Emperor Georgiou and can't just be Lorca? Because I was gonna, when I stopped myself, I was gonna say, well, they need to have the Georgiou Burnham standoff over whatever to kind of tie up that thread that I thought they tied up like 15 episodes ago.
Yeah, right.
But you can still have that same fight with Lorca and Burnham because Lorca has become basically the stand-in. He's her captain now.
Yeah,
they've had a relationship, or at least they did. Why not put that on display as, she's in the same position she was before? I'm assuming this is what they're going to do, is there's going to be some sort of conflict there, because why else would you do it?
Right.
Well,
I think it ties into your... Remember that, I hate the After Trek shows. I hate I hate any of these shows that happen after a series is on. They have a half-hour interview with the creators and writers, where the writers can basically say, this is all the stuff we didn't put in the episode, so you can't hold it against us, even though it's not in the actual episode. The Lorca thing was, originally Lorca was supposedly, he was a normal tactician, but the writers were like, well, how can Lorca be good at fighting a war?
Which is
insane. So we'll make him a mirror universe version. That doesn't make sense on its face, but it also doesn't make, if that was going to be the case, why wouldn't Lorca come back here at the very end to fight the Klingon war at that point?
And also, I feel like it kind of undercuts the entire point of your show that you set up, where you've got this science ship, right? If you go way back to the third episode, the Discovery is presented as a science ship.
Yeah, science ship, yep.
And the captain of this science ship is a war captain. So you've instantly set up this conflict of science, science in progress versus the reductiveness of killing and war.
Yeah, yeah.
And, in a wartime scenario, what is appropriate and is Lorca are his methods necessary to fight this battle, that kind of stuff. And just turning him into a mirror universe bad guy just to explain why he's good at fighting, that's fucking stupid.
Right.
I'm sorry, that's just ridiculous. Why? I mean, it ended up being a fairly good twist. I'm not going to take that away from him. I guess it was all right, but it was, I don't know. It's just so what is the Admiral then? Is the reason that the Starfleet's losing the war is because they're all shitty at war? Is that why they're losing?
Apparently, yeah. And I think Zach Hanlon talked a little bit about this.
Does that mean that Kirk and Picard are mirror universe versions of themselves because they're good at killing people when they have to?
I mean, not to give anything away, but we are in the middle of another series that is going to slowly devolve into war over the next couple seasons. So it's not like Star Trek has not done war storylines before.
Right.
And I think that it's hard to even pin it down. The war stuff is basically the fact that Starfleet is not coming off very well in this.
Yeah.
And it's also becoming very problematic, as you were saying, you'd expect the threads to be contracting at this point, where we're now spreading into a point of, why was this Klingon conflict never mentioned in another series at some point? We almost were destroyed by the Klingons on some level. You know what I mean?
Right.
And this is all new information. This is not something that we're referencing in the past. The show is also very conflicted because at the end of the episode, when they show us the last episode, they show us the map, and Saru is according to the map, the Federation is destroyed. Cornwall comes in this episode, says they've lost 20% of the Federation, so I don't know where the number is here, actually. I think the writers are a little confused about what's actually going on.
Well, we've lost 20% doesn't make for a good cliffhanger, so.
But it also, for a series that's been so patting itself on the back about its progressivism, nothing wrong with having diversity in your cast, nothing wrong with bringing gay characters in. They fucked up the gay character arc completely by killing them off, essentially. And then the female admiral, right, is a terrible, terrible commanding officer.
Yeah, she's not very good.
She's awful. She basically becomes this sort of weak-willed, stereotypical woman where she's upset that her boyfriend jilted her at the start, right? She shoots Lorca's fortune cookies with a phaser. She's storming around because Lorca betrayed her. And then when it comes down to the start,
gross misuse of a phaser, by the way.
I know, yeah, it's a very dialed in setting though, to not go through the fortune cookies into the desk or anything. And then when they find that the starbase is destroyed, she is so in shock that she can't issue orders to get out of there. Saru has to step in and say, like, we need to leave right now.
Yeah, that scene in particular, I was thinking, like, once they saw the Klingon thing on the side, and they said, yeah, it's good. There's like 280 Klingons in there. I was just saying to the screen, shoot it, blow it up, blow it up. Blow it up. There's no reason for you not to shoot this thing and blow it up. But, whatever.
Did the 280 Klingons kill the 80,000 people that were in the space?
I'm sorry. Maybe it wasn't 200. It was a lot of Klingons. It was like a sizable amount of Klingons. I forgot how many people were on the ship.
There's also been more painting done in this series than any other Star Trek. They painted and repainted the ISS USS thing, and then they painted the Klingon symbol.
At least they remembered that detail. Yeah, the thing about the diversity, I wanted to point out, I actually did there was a moment that I did kind of really enjoy where, I think it was towards the end, where the Admiral was on the bridge and commanding whatever was happening. And I realized that there were no straight white men on the bridge.
Yeah, yeah.
Or really in the cast for the most part at this point. And I was like, oh, wow.
Sarek is the only thing. Yeah, Sarek's the closest.
And he was gone by that point. And even so, it's like it didn't, I know people make a big deal out of that, but it felt really good that they managed to do that very seamlessly and have it be very satisfying. And satisfying and not drawing a huge attention to it,
Yes, that's all I like. I don't need the attention drawn to it. It's fine with what they did. They drew up a cast that can support that, and it worked out that way. I don't think about it while I'm watching it, but it's more just the perspective from what seems to be the production and the writing aspect of it doesn't tie in with what they were trying to do on that level. And I don't understand writing the Admiral this way. Like she's not very good at this, so I don't know why she's in command at this point and why, I don't know. And they're not even mentioning it or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes into what I'm talking about, where it's like you don't really, if you've watched the show, it's almost a disservice to the show, to the episode that you're watching, because it actually makes the episode worse. Because if you hadn't watched any of the other shows before this, I don't think a lot of the stuff that happens in here comes off that bad.
Right.
Like the Admiral not being able to do whatever, I don't know if that comes off as bad if you haven't seen her up to this point and be like, she kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Or, yeah. I mean, can we talk about, I don't know what you were going to say, I don't know if you said what the worst scene was, but I have for me, and I don't know why people were like praising this, because I read a few reviews where they praised this scene, but that scene with Burnham and Tyler was fucking dog shit.
No, that was my worst scene. That scene is horrible.
God.
You can go ahead though. I've been talking enough. You can rant about that scene.
I don't know who they got to write that scene, but I don't know if they had watched any of the show or realized that they were writing a Star Trek show.
Yep.
Because there's a point, like, they're having this relationship argument, and Tyler's argument is basically like, don't put this all on me. You just can't handle the fact that you fell in love with someone and things, quote, got complicated. Yes, understatement of the fucking year. But like, she doesn't even respond to that. She in an appropriate way. Yeah, it's just like they play that scene as though it's taken out of any romantic comedy or romantic drama or whatever, completely, like, not even considering the fact of everything that's happened up to this point. And for him to, like, if he had said that and she had been like, whoa, hold on here, dude, and then, like, kind of, you know, tore him down about it,
Yeah,
I'd be like, all right, that's one thing.
Ship or something.
But, like, that scene felt like it was copy and pasted from literally anything else.
Yes.
And I laughed out loud while watching it. And watching Tyler, who I'm sure is a great actor, like, fake cry his way through equating things getting complicated with having total body reassignment surgery and becoming a sleeper agent for the people who killed your family. It's just like, what? I don't know. It was one of many very long ways to go for a ham sandwich, so to speak, that the second half of this episode brought up.
It's definitely, that was my worst scene of the series. I think it's terrible. I think that it's bad. I think that it's, people are saying the acting was good. I think that they were doing a competent job with terrible material, but I wouldn't say that the acting was fantastic or anything. I
thought Burnham was all right. But
she does good emotional reactions, but I think that she's in a tough spot there because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think that the scripting of that is bad. It's exactly like you said. It's as if they just took a romantic drama and they cut a scene out and sort of switched to words like Klingon and like Pakistani around or something like that. Like they just kind of cut and pasted things out. But or it's like they play that scene as though she fell in love with Tyler and then found out he was still married. Right. Yes.
You know,
exactly.
It's like that kind of thing where it's like you are really underselling this situation. Like I'm totally on board with her with the stuff with Tilly saying like, oh, you need to go talk to him, and then she actually, kind of faced and all that kind of stuff. And I actually liked the end of it. I thought the end of that scene was good, where she said that stuff about when she was disgraced, it was X, Y, and Z, and it was solitary, and then I thought that was good. I thought it was a good ending to the scene, but that scene overall was just no. Yeah,
I think that it actually reminded me of, remember when we watched, I think it's Booby Trap, the TNG episode where Geordi's like, I just wanted to be your friend. And he flips it around on
yes.
Leah Brahms. It's very much that, in line with that. It's kind of flipping it around to the point where you're like, hey, you're actually the one who is wrong here in a lot of ways. So maybe
you can't handle this because I turned into a mind-switched murderer.
I still don't that scene's terrible. We don't need to talk about it anymore. It's a horrible, horrible scene. And I just want to bring up again the fact that why did they cut and shorten his limbs for this Klingon expedition?
Every time they explain it, it gets more complicated.
Yeah.
Like when they have that sit down where they're asking him about it, what he remembers, and then he's like, well, you have to understand what they did to him. And I'm like, I don't understand.
Why did they have to cut up Vok to put his brain into...
I don't know. I have no idea. They've shown us graphic surgery scenes. We've had like 8 different people explain the process, and I still have no fucking clue what they did to him, and nor do I even care. Like they keep trying to make me care, but I don't care because it does not matter.
Well, you know what's weird to it is that this is obviously what they do for the remember Trouble with Tribbles? The Klingon gets turned into a human.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what happens in that episode. And the Tribble smells him and it gets angry because the Tribbles hate Klingons. But
I see.
It's funny that they turned such a dark thing into such a light. Not that they turned it, but Tribbles came first. But there's like this schism between the horror of this procedure and the comedy of the procedure on some level.
So is that supposed to be the same procedure?
That's what I'm assuming that they're trying to tie in together. Oof. Yeah.
Yikes.
But in a typical the writing of the show fashion, when Saru is talking to Tyler and Tyler explains what the process is and everything, and Saru has this moment, he's like, my God, are there more of you? And then Tyler's like, no, never mind. I'm the only one. There's no reason to worry about it. It's like, why did Saru even bring this up? It certainly implies that there would be more Klingon double agents around.
Yeah, I read one review that mentioned that, and I think they misunderstood it because I got the same impression you did, that he was like, no, this is just like a thing that they were trying out or whatever. Because the review that I read said that they thought that might have been how they were going to ham-fistedly explain the more human-looking Klingons.
Oh, I see. Although I think Enterprise already explained that, I think, not to get too bogged down in the nerdness, but Enterprise, which is 100 years before this, has already explained that. And there's our listener, Tarek, retweeted someone who I thought was funny. He was saying that the Enterprise is the series that gets referenced the best in this show for some reason.
Yeah.
Because of the Defiant, and Archer just gets a direct shout out in this episode, which is interesting. But
it makes sense. I mean, it wouldn't make a ton of sense for them to reference anything that comes after it.
No, they can't reference it after. But that brings us into the way that I want to wrap up this. Why is this show set in the time period that it is?
No idea. Inexplicable. Oh, yeah. Okay. So they also just swept under the rug the way that they're going to get rid of the Spore Drive, right?
Well, they swept under the rug if you thought there was going to be some sort of weird grand reveal about why we don't know about the mirror universe, you can forget about that. But they just say it's classified and no one's allowed to talk about the mirror universe.
I assumed that was part and parcel with the Spore Drive because Sarikis says like that stuff needs to be classified. If anybody knew that there was technology out there that could do this, it would drive everybody insane. So I'm assuming that means the Spore Drive is also going to be classified. So that's just like that's it.
Well, I actually let's get on let's do the mirror universe before the Spore Drive. I forgot that we forgot to talk about this. So, Sarek says that the reason that they have to classify the mirror universe, right, is that can you imagine a world where people who have lost a loved one knew about the mirror universe and would go to meet their mirror counterpart? Does that make sense to you on some level? I'm torn about whether or not this works or doesn't work for the mirror universe. I think that on a fundamental, what I interpret the mirror universe to be, it doesn't make any sense. But if this was a more realistic, like leftovery HBO Leftovers kind of series, I could see it happening.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it works. I don't think it works for this series, and I don't think it works for the franchise. But I think you could make like a good Black Mirror episode out of that idea. Yeah.
Well, that was actually kind of the plot of that new Cloverfield movie they just released on Netflix. Sure. Is there that's a big aspect of it. That movie's basically a mirror universe episode of Star Trek to an extent, and that does play into it. Is there's one character whose situation is one way in the regular universe, and it's another way in the mirror universe they end up in, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think it's that realistic because like 99.95% of people would not even know where to start to get there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, if you told me that there was an alternate dimension or an alternate universe where everyone I ever loved who has died is still alive and just is happy and everything, I'd say, okay, cool. I mean, I will assume then that they are happy and living their lives.
Right.
I mean, obviously, I'm not in the destructive mindset where I would do what I have to do to get there, which would be to figure out how to get a ship that has Spore Drive technology or teleport myself through an ion field. Like I feel like it's not that big of a deal.
No, it's a very small subset of people who would be drawn to that. Enough where I don't think it's justified keeping it secret because of that. I'm torn about it. I don't think it works for the series, and I think for the reason that you mentioned, like it's not a big enough draw really to go over there. And I think thematically, people shouldn't want to be going to the mirror universe in this franchise. It's not the place where you want to go, even if you've lost a loved one and you can see their double. Because of, we've talked at length about the problem with the Burnham Georgiou thing is that she's not Georgiou. She's not your Georgiou. There's nothing similar about this person other than the fact that they look the same. And it's odd.
What if they had capped that scene off with Burnham saying something like, "No, you don't understand. You don't ever want to go there because that place is nothing but the,
it's the opposite."
The reflection of the worst aspects of yourself. That's a
better ending. If they all gravely nod at that or something and be like, okay, maybe that makes sense, and that's why they don't want to spread the word. But I honestly was a little bit surprised. I expected and maybe there is a bigger reason, like you're saying, we might jump back to the Battle of the Binary Stars and everything will be erased, and that's a better, clearer canon reset to me than just saying it's classified. But who knows? We'll see. And then the Spore Drive, everyone obviously referenced that the Spore Drive is basically sort of a foreshadowing of the Genesis device on some level.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking that too. I don't know. That whole thing was ridiculous.
It was absurd, yeah.
Why you spent... What does this thing have any like
I
weight
thought the
to
Spore
it at
Network
all.
was destroyed. I thought the
Yeah.
Spore Network was destroyed when they went through it, and Stamets' evil disease was spreading through it, and their last chance of using it was to escape the mirror universe, and they came back.
Yeah, I was under that impression too, because
Yeah.
they made a big point of that episode to point that out. And like I said before, the less you know about this show, the fewer episodes you've watched makes the one you're watching right now that much better. Because the Spore Drive was such a big thing, and a couple episodes were like, yeah, it's broken, it's dead, we can't use it anymore. We have one opportunity to basically like Back to the Future 3 ourselves back into the, strap ourselves to the front of a train and get up to 88 miles an hour to get ourselves back to the future. And they did that, and then that was my understanding that was it, that they were done. Why didn't they do this fucking terraforming thing in the mirror universe? Like what instead of dealing with the Galactic Empire, why don't you just fuck off and regrow your spores and go home?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I hate the why don't you stuff, because obviously they're making decisions, narrative decisions, whatever. That's fine. I'd much rather deal with what they actually did. But this is an instance where I think what they did does not make a ton of sense in terms of what they've set up and the weight that they've given to certain aspects of the things that they presented.
Yeah, and I think that the whole sojourn in the mirror universe, I would have been fine with it if it amounted to something. But when it comes back and Cornwell is just like, guys, you fucking missed. You missed some crazy shit over here. We lost so much territory. We had some crazy battles against the Klingons. It's like, what the hell? Why was I spending all this time in the mirror universe? I could have been here watching this happen. So let's go to the ending, which ties into our thoughts for next week. So Georgiou is appointed Captain Philippa Georgiou. They say she's back from the dead. She's back from the dead. The crew accepts it.
Yeah, can I for 1 second talk about how fucking stupid that is? Because you've got a crew of people. You're on the Discovery. The entire crew of the Discovery just came back from the mirror universe, where they are aware that there are mirror versions of everybody they know. They saw Mirror Tilly, so they know that's a thing. They know Lorca was from there and was evil. And then all of a sudden, just by coincidence, and I mean, obviously, they played it a certain way. Everybody seemed to be kind of shocked about it, so maybe they do know or whatever. But, like, you can't... It's going to be a tough call to pull one over on the Discovery, having just come back from the mirror universe, and be like, oh, by the way, coincidentally, Georgiou is not only not dead, she's here, even though she didn't beam onto the ship, onto the bridge with us like everybody else did. I don't know, man. I think that's, like... I don't know. I don't know about that twist.
I didn't... to me, that twist felt entirely in the show. On some level, like, I don't know if I'm just sinking into what the show is going to do, but I was like, yeah, of course. Like, of course Georgiou is going to do this.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And I agree that it's terrible. They do not reveal why they're doing this on some level. So this could be a revelation that actually makes sense as to why they would want to do this. I agree with you that Lorca being in this position would probably make more narrative sense and feel more satisfying for it to happen. Mm-hmm. But So that brings us, neither of us like this twist. It's not even really a twist, I don't think, at the end. It's kind of just like the show doing what the show does. And that brings us into the conclusion here. Are we going to wrap this story up this season?
I don't know. I have no idea. Like, let me hit you back with another question. What story? What are you talking about? What story are we going to wrap up?
Is the Klingon War going to be ended by the end of this season?
I have no idea.
Would you be upset if it was not ended? I would be very annoyed if this Klingon War storyline continues for much longer.
I would be annoyed by it if they continue to handle it the way that they've handled it in this season, which is just to have it happening in the background while they fuck off and do stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, if they actually wanted to address the Klingon War, that's fine. But, I don't know.
There was a quote from one of the producers saying that season 2 is going to, and these are producers talking, so you never know what sort of bullshit and what they're just talking about because they're trying to sell the next season. But they wanted season 2 to be more standalone and based on away missions and visiting planets and stuff.
So like Star Trek, you mean?
Yeah, like they wanted it to be like Star Trek. So it turned out they watched some Star Trek while they were making this first season. They're like, oh, geez, it's a little bit different.
We should just do that show.
But I think that. that's kind of what I want, and that's my hope for season 2. So I don't want this to continue. I find it very difficult, barring some sort of time flashback to the Battle of Binary Stars that resets everything, how you can wrap all of this up in a convincing manner and make me not feel that you basically just shoved everything into the last episode and had it all wash out in the end.
Well, what's fascinating to me is that they like went out of their way to make this so difficult for themselves. Like, what they're doing here is not anything revelatory or novel. Like, they're
speed might be. The pace of the show might be.
Yes, 100%. It's very, very fast. But, like, the idea of what they're doing, in that they are telling a season-long story that has episode-to-episode asides, sometimes, is not anything, like, new. I was just watching, like, the CW superhero shows the other day, and I was thinking, like, this is exactly what... They're doing exactly what Star Trek wants to do. They're telling a season-long story. They dip into it from time to time, but they have other stories that they tell that are very satisfying on their own and have character development, and they drop you some stuff to move the series along, and then they kind of wrap it up at the end of the season. Like, it's not... They've been doing it since Twin Peaks, basically. It's not brain science. Brain science. What am I fucking It's not, guys. It's not brain science. Okay. But you know what I mean? It's like, but they're just making it so difficult for themselves. Like, it's like they're trying extra hard because it's Star Trek, and because we're in this era of television where everything is prestige TV, that everything has to be heavy and everything has to be cliffhangery and like
serious.
I think they're just trying too hard, and hopefully that quote from the producer means they're going to kind of like back it off and be like, all right, let's just focus on making a TV show here instead of trying to beat the world. I mean, I don't, they were in a tough spot. I'll be honest, they having to do a Star Trek television show, which they basically had to have done in order to line up more or less with the 50th anniversary, when it probably was a little bit undercooked. They lost their showrunner. Like, they were in a tough spot where they had to deliver. And so I think they were probably swinging for the fence, which is why they're trying to do so much. And I just think, unfortunately, it's to the detriment of the show. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, maybe that makes sense on some sort of psychological level. You think that, with all the turmoil in the season, you have to really overwrite this thing to make people eye catch it, when I really think in that situation it might not feel right, but you just have to tone it down. You have to survive your first season and know that Star Trek has a fan base that is going to support the show by buying CBS All Access.
Right.
The show got a second season like 3 episodes into this season. It's a foregone conclusion that if you make a competent show, even if you make an incompetent show, basically was what this has proven, that Star Trek will get another season out of it. Mm-hmm. They should have just pulled back and reined it in at that point, or, knowing that.
Before we go, I think we would be remiss if we didn't touch on the main plot point leading into the next episode, which is the military tactic of jumping the Discovery inside of a cave on Kronos.
Yes.
In order to map it from the inside. Now, I explained that to my girlfriend. She said, "Oh, that sounds really Star Trek-y." And I was saying, no, that's ridiculous even for Star Trek. Now, am I correct in that, or am I thinking about this too much? Because when they said that, I just started laughing, because that's preposterous.
What aspect do you find the most preposterous? Going inside the planet?
Yeah, I get. Well, first of all, that they're like, well, there are some caves big enough to fit a starship in that we know about, even though they don't know anything about the planet. But just you've gone your entire season using the Spore Drive as something that's very volatile and kind of imprecise. And the only time they've ever used it is they're jumping from dead space into dead space. So they're going to jump inside a planet. I don't know. It just seemed like it was, I guess if your back's against the wall, you got to do something. Sure, why not? But it just seemed really silly to me.
Well, I mean, I guess there's 2 ways to look at this. I guess there is going inside the planet doesn't seem too crazy, because there was that Next Generation episode where they had the metaphasic shielding or whatever, which allowed them to travel into planets, basically.
I guess I missed that one.
So there's that episode.
Unless I didn't. I forget a lot of the ones I watched, so I may have watched it and loved it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. So the Spore Network is back. They can use it to jump inside of Kronos. They've already had an episode where they made like 150 jumps in a matter of seconds, and that allowed them to map the Klingon ship. Remember when they did that? They did that quick jumping thing. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't they do that on Kronos to map it? And that would be they jump so many times that it destroys the Spore Network at that point.
Yeah, no, that makes way more sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only reason I can think of is because they already did that. So I got to
sure they don't want to repeat it. Yeah. I'm torn.
Or hey, how about this? How about they say that's their plan and then they do it and the Spore Drive breaks and they have to deal. Yeah. They have to deal with we're totally exposed here now. Like actually, some believable consequences and drama instead of like, well, what happens if they find the, what's size the ship? Anyway, the spaceship sized cavern that we've jumped into inside of their planet. I don't know.
Do we know what size? Do we know the classification of the Discovery?
Stamets says it, but I can't remember what it is. It begins with a C. Okay,
interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look that up, or someone will let us know about it. We'll see how it goes. Let's give quick predictions before we go. What happens in the next episode? I noticed a lot of dancing strippers or something. Did you notice that on the Up Next?
I'm so terrified they're going to end the season on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, what would you imagine the cliffhanger to be? I don't mean to put you on the spot. Did you have I have a hard time even imagining what a cliffhanger would be at this point.
Know. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. I have no idea. It's like judging by that preview, it's like, well, it looks like this is going to be like a boots on the ground reconnaissance mission on Kronos, but it's like this is the last episode of the season.
Yeah, and it looks like very like Mad Maxy or something on Kronos, but there is the augment virus, which is what makes the Klingons look human. Does that somehow get brought into this and all the Klingons on Kronos turn into humans or something like that? And that ties into TOS on some level?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much. Everyone let us know what your thoughts are about how this is going to happen and whether or not you think it'll wrap up.
I am still holding out hope. Well, not hope, but my money is still on ending up back at the Battle of the Binary Stars.
Okay.
Just because my slavish devotion to story structure will not let me let it go. But I don't know. If they don't wrap up the story, I don't know what they do. Like I've said all season, I don't know where the show's going, and not in a good way.
I think if they jump back to Binary Stars, it's the cleanest break that the season can have, and you can almost wash your hands of everything that happened this season.
I think there's going to be a battle between Georgiou and Burnham.
Yes, that has to happen. Burnham has to kill Georgiou. I think that's a 99% certainty.
Yeah.
The Admiral will probably die, I think.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think that's it. I think that's all that would happen at that point. And if anyone else dies, I think that they will reset time immediately after that. So.
Well, my theory about jumping back was I thought that they were going to put Tyler inside the torchbearer suit. And he was going to use his Klingon brain there to, help disperse, do something. I don't know.
Remember when we ended the first episode saying, Jesus, I hope that's not all we see of the torchbearer suit, because that guy was so proud of the work that he put into it.
And he should be. He put a lot of work into it, and it was on screen for like a good 2.5 seconds.
It looked cool. What was the whole point of that torchbearer shit? Jesus Christ, who knows?
I don't know.
All right, anyway. Guys, let us know what your thoughts are. As always, we're looking forward to the end of the season next week.
I must return to Vulcan. There are evolving details to the plan that must be considered.
What evolving details?
I sense you aren't easy. During my mind meld with Saru, I learned of your attachment to the Klingon spy and what he did to you. Such events are clearly troubling.
I'm fine, Sarek.
I remain unconvinced. There is irony here, of course. The man you fell in love with was a Klingon.
I don't know what he was.
There is also grace. For what greater source of peace exists than our ability to love our enemy?
I've made foolish choices. emotional choices.
Well, you are human. As is your mother.
There is no telling what any one of us may do where the heart is concerned. We are at war. Logic dictates that each farewell may be our last.
The show continues to be a solid C- to me. I've reached out to a couple other channels to see if they want to come on and debate it. People that think that the show is actually a positive. Trexpertise would be a good grab. I'll talk to him again, see if that wants to happen after the season wraps up. But we should probably wait until the season ends after next week before we start doing that. And then that's about it. So thank you very much for listening. You can check out all the social media links. They'll be in the video description and the podcast blurb. You go to patreon.com/the Pensky File if you want to support the show. It's a great way to do that. We appreciate it. You get extra content. You get extra MP3 podcasts, MP3s. We talk about movies, talk about everything like that. And as always, the Captain tier supporters get a shout out. So those guys are Vincent Adultman, Stephen Cobb, Holly McLaughlin, Carrier Mobility, Doug Valcamp, Michael Pond, Bradley Killens, Rune Vendler, Jay Stanley, Mike Burnett, Matthew Ross, Magpie Nest Productions, Kyle Barrett, Joint Mango, and Tarek Latif. Guys, thank you very much. You make the show possible. Good talking to you all on Twitter too. We're all very much enjoying Discovery, I think, at this point.
I like watching people try to anticipate my opinion of the show.
But we'll see how.
I don't want to be. I don't know if that means that I'm becoming repetitive, but
well, it's I guess that's a good way to go about it. Like the problem with this show is kind of what I was thinking. Why the strength of the podcast and all Star Trek podcasts work, because the series is prior to Discovery is a very good series for sort of talking about each episode on its own face. Like each episode is kind of a very discussable for good or for bad. You can talk about each episode. Discovery with its huge serialization stuff is less talkable or less interestingly talkable than the other series. I think we're doing an okay job. I think we've done a better job since the break because we sort of changed the way that we talk about it. But it's a difficult show to podcast about because of the fact that you don't know what's coming, and what's coming probably won't make any sense because of everything that's happened previously has not made a lot of sense. Right. So that's where we stand with it.
Right. Yep.
That's about it, guys. Well, Clay, thanks for coming on. Do you have anything you want to talk about? Any plug?
Red Line's in stores now. I think you can pre-order it on Amazon. I don't know if you can. It's out there. So if you feel like you want to grab one, I'd be much obliged.
And I think maybe a new gimmick of the show will just wrap up with some sort of non sequitur topic of discussion, something that we've liked or not liked so far. So you saw Cloverfield on Netflix.
I did.
Would you recommend it, or would you like 2-second blurb that you want to say about it?
It's very clear how they tried to rework it into a Cloverfield movie, and it doesn't really succeed. It's fun if you're not really paying attention to it. It looks fantastic, and the cast is really good, but as a movie, it's not very good. But it's, if you just want to throw on a sci-fi thing to watch, you could do worse, I think.
And I think my throwaway will be, we just got done watching the Patriots lose the Super Bowl to the Eagles, so that'll date the podcast. But we watched that together, Clay, at our friend Sean's, and I think I might just be getting older, or as you tweeted, the Patriots are just successful enough at this point where I don't really care if they lose the Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Eagles hadn't won one in ever. So
Eagles played
a
a better game. Eagles were a better team.
They
played a better game. They deserved to win it. So good on Philly, good on the Philly fans, good on the Eagles and everything like that. And I guess that's the way it is. So that's it for the show. Thank you guys very much for listening, and we will see you next time.